Okay, good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining. This is the first of a three-part series on financial reporting in NAV 2017. Today I'm going to be focusing on a couple of the new features in NAV 2017 specifically, and this is just core NAV. Anybody else who's on the call that may be using a Ceramic product, some of this will be applicable to you, particularly when we start getting into the analysis piece of it and designing some of the account schedules. Again, here is my contact information. Anybody that works with us directly hopefully already has that information. This slide deck is also at the end if you don't have to, capture my email address or my phone number now. Just want to let you know, probably the best way to get in touch with me is via email if you have any questions about any of the content here after the presentation. So at a high level, here is our agenda. The first thing I'm going to be talking about is the newest feature in Base NAV 2017, where they have an offering where you can define account categories on your GL accounts, and then using those categories you can set up some predefined account schedules. It just makes administering them and creating them a little bit quicker. Then I'm going to do a very high level overview of how to create account schedules and combine your row and column layouts to preview and print your account schedules, and then I'm going to talk about analysis views and how you can use those in correlation with your account schedules to get a little bit more better visibility into some of the dimensional reporting. So the first topic is account category, so let's jump in. So this is new to NAV 2017. So what you'll see new specifically in NAV 2017 on your GL account card are two new fields where you can have a high-level category and a subcategory. Also, something that's new is on your general ledger setup, there is the 4 predefined core financial statements that would be updated based on the categories that you define on each one of your general ledger chart of accounts. Okay, so on this screenshot, I'm showing you a picture of what the high-level GL account categories are, and if you would do a search and get to the GL account category list at a highest level, this is what you will see. These 6 core ones, I think you can edit the description on them, but these you can't delete. These are the ones that are going to tell NAV when you generate the account schedule, if I want, where it should reside. Your GL account should reside on either a balance sheet or an income statement. I also have a view here where I've expanded a couple of the high-level categories here, and you can see there's a little bit lower detail. And on this list, they've added a couple of really nice features. So if I were to highlight this liabilities line, it gives me a fact box that actually gives me a list of all the GL account categories that I've included on here. Another nice feature that I really like is in order to get accurate financials that tie out, you want to make sure that every single one of your GL accounts have a category on it if you're going to use this feature. So it also includes a fact box here if you have any GL accounts on your list that don't have a category assigned to it. This column right here you would use if you want to use cash flow statements. Okay, so here just giving you a high-level overview of how this is used. Again, this screenshot is a little bit hard to read, but let me see if I can explain to you what we're looking at here. I did a search on my GL account category list. In order to edit it, you can see a lot of the features on the main ribbon can't be seen. So if I wanted to actually add any rows or manage the GL accounts that are showing in any of the categories, or actually if I wanted to do the generate, once I have categories assigned to all my GL accounts, I have to go into my edit list, and then you can see here I highlighted the heading on my edit list that opens up. So once I have everything all set up with categories, I just simply have to hit this generate account schedules. Now, this might be something that needs to be done periodically if you add GL accounts going forward. And once you have your account schedule pretty much in place, you shouldn't have to do this very often. But this particular function is the function that will actually recreate and administer the 4 core statements that you saw that are shown in your general ledger setup. There's no type of progress bar or anything that happens when you do this. I mean, it happens so quickly, you just kind of hit it and it's like a little bit of a blip and boom, you have 4 core financial statements. So once you have those created, the four that you had seen in the general ledger setup, I filtered my account schedule list here so that you can see the four that are there. You still have the capability of going in and manually editing them. And if you do that from your account schedule list, you're going to get this little warning here that said, that any changes that you make can potentially be lost. And you just want to be mindful of that, because if you do go in and you do that generate account schedule function again, that's the point where you would lose any changes if you come in and manually do it. I have a screenshot here below of the balance sheet one where you could see it looks very similar. If anyone has worked with any of your account schedule row layouts, it looks exactly what you would see. And if you were to come in here and manage this manually, from this account schedule list, if I generate it again, any changes that you make here would be lost. If you actually really like this layout and want to use it as a starting point, you could actually copy this and make one that won't be updated if you do the generate account schedule. So at this point, let me just go in. I'm going to slide NAV over here real quick, and I'm going to show you this real, firsthand right NAV. Just kind of review everything that I've just shown you here. So on my chart of accounts, I'm just going to go into any account, and you can see here now I have the account categories, and at the highest level it's going to be those 6 that we showed on that list, and those are not editable. The editable piece of it are the different subcategories. So the fact that I have assets selected here, you can see everything that shows on their assets, and you would pick the respective category or subcategory that I want this to report under on your financial statements. Okay, then I'm just going to go real quick into my general ledger setup. I just want to show you real quick where you can find those 4 reports that I was talking about. And when you set up, once you upgrade to NAV 2017, or you're thinking of moving to NAV, these 4 core statements will automatically come set up for you. And when you do that generate function, it's going to assign all your GL accounts respectively to the 4 statements that are defined right here in your general ledger setup. Okay, now I'm going to go to my account category list. I'm just going to do, and I have to spell it correctly, and I'm going to go to GL account coders, and here you can see the 6 that are uneditable. And actually from this list right here, you can see there's not a whole lot available, and there's not a whole lot of editing that's going on. But if I drill down to the different levels here, this is what I was talking about earlier. I can get a little list of all the GL accounts that are just chosen on this accounts receivable. And then here, this is a good sign. I don't have any GL accounts that are set up that don't have categories right now. If I want to edit any of these lists, I'm just going to go into edit list. And here you can see I can have generate account schedules. Now, I want to show you real quick how this works. So I'm just going to go in and actually look at one of the account schedules that comes core with the system, and this is balance sheet 1. And I'm going to go into edit, and you're going to see that little message that I was talking about. This is a warning. Actually going in and editing, this is not going to change anything. If I make a manual change when I'm in here, it could be overwritten. So you can see this conforms to all the GL accounts that are in all the respective categories. Okay, so if I want to, I'm going to go back to my account schedule list, and I'm going to select this balance sheet 1, and I want to do an overview. And you can see right here that this is a little unusual. Gosh, look, the assets. I usually don't want accounts showing at this level here. I don't like this. I'm going to go back into my overview here, and on my account schedule, I can usually drill down. Oh, this is my bonds account. That's what's causing the variance here. Account number 12100. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my cash account here. I think I want my bonds account to show here. So I'm going to go select here, select this bonds account. Now you can see on my category list, this is showing up here. But if I go back into my account schedule and look at this here, it's still not going to show up. And the reason why it's not going to show up here is because I haven't run that generate yet. Okay, so now I'm going to do my generate. Boom, just a blip like that. You saw how fast that went. I'm going to go back into my account schedule, and hopefully this is going to show up here. Now my bonds is showing up here, and if I go to an overview of my schedule, and now my assets are showing the way I would expect it to see. Okay, so at a high level, this is the way the account schedules work. And like I said, once you have your core chart of accounts set up and have everything all assigned, this generate feature should probably only need to be done once, or maybe just periodically. You'll just have to remember to come in and do it when you add new GL accounts. So at a high level, that's what our GL account categories are. So let's get into the next phase of this, and we're going to be talking about account schedules. So account schedules are very powerful features available in NAV, which give you, gives you a lot of flexibility with financial reporting. You can use both any data that you would find in your general ledger and/or your budget entry table. You can also create an unlimited number of row layouts and column layouts and match them both together. So in this screenshot, I showed you I'm just going to show you and talk about some of the high-level features of your row layouts. So the first column here is a row number that you would assign. This is an optional field, but if you want to use NAV or respective rows in a formula to get totaling, then it's not optional, because you have to assign a row number. And you can see here I have row number 20 and 30. And on this particular row, I have a formula, and it's indicating that I want to add those two rows together. So I usually get in the habit of adding row numbers, because when I'm creating a financial, it's very common that you do want a total. But it's not necessary unless you're going to be including it in a total. Your descriptions, if you do a mass update by inserting, it'll automatically pull in the description of the accounts that you use, and I'll show that in a minute when we go back into NAV. But if you're manually creating one, you can override whatever description shows there and put that in there. Your totaling type is going to indicate what kind of total and what's going to drive the information that's delivered based on the information that you put here. The most typical ones that you're going to find are your posting accounts. So in this range here, even if this particular range includes what is considered a beginner in total in NAV, it's only going to calculate anything on a posting account. And this is a good way to make sure that if you put in a range like this of your posting accounts, if you add any GL accounts in the future, you're going to reduce the amount of administration time that you have to come in here and maybe manage this range. So just that's something to consider when you're designing your statements if you're doing them manually. Another option in this totaling field it's called a total field, and that's where you would indicate a GL account that is tagged as an end total. And of course, formulas. That's another popular one that's used. In your row type, I have a little asterisk here. The three options are net change balance, at date, and beginning balance. The reason why I have an asterisk here is when we go to look at our column layouts, you have these same options of net change, balance at date, and beginning balance. If you have a conflict, or I shouldn't say conflict, if you have a different setting on your column layout, I have a little note here indicating that the one that is the most restricted is going to take precedence, and that's the information that's going to be displayed. So this is something that you're going to have to play around a little bit and just see what works best for you. On your amount type, your options are net amount, and that's the most common one used, and you have debit and credit account. On a row layout, I'm not sure, I haven't come across a net debit or credit use, but maybe for cash flow statements or something like that, that may be useful. A couple of the other fields that are kind of significant in your row layouts is this show opposite sign. This really comes in handy, specifically on your liability and equity section of your balance sheet, and also on your income, the income statement, the revenue accounts, because inherently those have credit balances, and that would show up on as a negative amount on your financial unless you hit show opposite sign. Now, if you hit show opposite sign, you need to take that in consideration when you're doing totaling, because oftentimes you might have to also show opposite sign on your total. There's this column here where you can show or hide a row. You might have a row in here that's just strictly for a calculation. So in that case, you might want to select no here. If you're just simply going to use it for calculation, you don't necessarily want it to display on a printed report. This bold feature is really nice because on headings and totals, you usually want to highlight those, and you can see on my asset header and then also on my total, I've indicated that I want to have it in bold. Again, it just makes your printed reports look really nice, and italicizing something also helps things stand out on a printed report. This underline feature, this also is something that would show up on a printed report, again, just highlighting totals. If you happen to create very detailed statements, you might want to manage right here on your account schedule row where you would have a page break if it ends up being multiple pages. If you do a detailed statement and you have a lot of assets and then your liabilities and equities don't fit on the same page, and you might want to put a page break right in here. This totaling column, you have this in both your column and row layout as well. I haven't really seen this used a whole lot on your row layout, more so on your column layout. Without the use of analysis views, the two options that you would have here for totaling would just be your two global dimensions that are defined. I had said earlier that I might have some of my Ceramic users on the phone, and if that's the case, then you're going to have more options on both your column and row layout of your dimensional reporting. But for my standard NAV users, I'm going to talk a little bit more about later how we can leverage our analysis views to get a couple more options here. If I specify one department here, this might not be as relevant on a balance sheet, but on an income statement, this row, if I were to indicate a specific department, that I would only see the information for that particular department. Like I said, this information is also available on a column layout. So another use of a column layout is something that I see some people ask for is you might want to have a column in your financial statement that might be a percentage of revenue. And I've displayed how to set that up. So on a row layout where I want to see all of my income, so you can see here in the sample database, I have indicated all of the accounts that make up the revenue, and then there's a formula here that gives me my total revenue. So what I need to do is indicate this row, and I'm going to have a totaling type of set base per percent, and I have to put this above all of my revenue accounts. Okay, and then I'll show you when we go to column layouts how the syntax that I would define for my column in order to leverage this particular totaling formula here. Okay, so now on my column layouts, the look and feel of the screen is very similar to my row layouts. The very first row that I define here is going to be my leftmost column. Then anything that's underneath here is going to be all the columns are going to be defined out on the right-hand side of any of my account schedules. So again, column numbers are not mandatory, but in most cases I get in the habit of putting it in there because again, if you need to use any of these columns in a formula, you can see right here, this is a budget versus actual, and I'm getting what this formula is deriving what this is, the actual is as a percentage of your budget. This is the column type where if you have a conflict to your row layout, the one with the least amount of detail or the most restrictive one would take precedence. Here you're going to indicate whether you want your actuals or your budget entries. And again, you have net amount, debit, and credit. If you have formula listed in your column type here, it would be mandatory that you put a formula in this field. Again, you can show opposite sides, and then you also have comparison fields that you can set up here. On my next screenshot, I'm going to get into a little bit more detail about the comparative columns. So I showed a column layout here that it might not be typical, but I just wanted to show the different syntaxes that you can use for either whether it's a comparison date formula or a comparison period formula. So for instance, in this particular, if I were to use this particular column layout on a financial, and let's say I was filtering from March 1st to March 31st, my current period, the fact that I have net change selected here, this would give me for March only. So this one, if I wanted to use a comparison date formula, I would do -1 year, and this would give me March of the prior year. My comparison period formula is -1 FY, which FY stands for fiscal year. So this is -1 fiscal year. Again, because I have net change in all of these columns, this is going to give me the same period for last year. So then in my third column on this one, I would see a year to date because I've indicated year to date, and I can use the same exact syntax. And the fact that I have year to date in my column type here is going to allow me to look at, again, if I have March 1st to March 31st, this is going to give me year-to-date March 31st, and both of these columns would give me the same information, March 31st, year-to-date for the prior year. Below on here, I have a couple of very common abbreviations for what you would use in this comparison period, and also some very common formulas that you might use in this comparison period. It really doesn't matter which one you use. What's most important, whichever one you're most comfortable with, the most important thing is that you get the data that you're looking for. And it might take a little bit of analysis of comparing it to your chart of accounts and filtering the date filter that you want in order to make sure you're deriving the correct data. Specifically on the column layout, this is showing how I would leverage that set basis percent field. So here I'm looking at, again, I'm looking at my current period, just my net change. And this is indicating here, the way I have this set up, this is, again, I need to use a formula. I'm going to take my period to date, and the fact that I have this percent after it, that's all I need to put in here. I'm saying I want to use my set basis percent. And in the screenshot that I had shown earlier on my row layout, I was looking at my revenue. So this column, everything in this column is going to give me what my percent to revenue is for the current period, and I can do the same exact thing for my year-to-date. So I have my year-to-date column. This would give me year-to-date data. Then I put in my formula year-to-date and my percent sign. So if I select a row layout that has a set basis percent, this column is going to give me what that percentage of revenue is for every single row in the financial statement. Okay, so once I have column layouts and row layouts defined, if I go back to my row layout list, I can marry the two together and use defaults. So I'm just starting, I just did a kind of a little bit more of a concise list here of the core financials that come with NAV. Here's a row layout, and by default, you would probably use, you might have one column layout that you would use all the time or most of the time, and that's the one that you would assign as a default. So each time you preview or want to print this particular account schedule in a report or in an overview, and I have the overview shown down here by default, that column layout is the one that's going to be displayed. This is just simply in this particular database, this net change, it's a very simple net change column. While I am in the same overview window, I can change my column layout. Also, before you would print or preview a report, if I chose the same exact account schedule, by default, this will come in, and then, but I can choose any other column layout that I want, and you can see right on the fly, it's going to show me and display the different column layout that I've chosen on the overview here. So at this point, I'm going to come back into NAV, bring NAV back over here, and at a high level, I'm going to just show you some of the things we just reviewed. I want to look at account schedules and get my account schedule list. Okay, you can see down here, these are the 4 core that come with NAV. I'm going to go into this demo one that I had shown you in the screenshot, and I'm going to go into edit it, and you can see here, this is exactly what I had shown in the screenshot where I have ranges of accounts. And like I said earlier, if you're doing anything manually, put in as large a range as you possibly can that will not overlap another range, and that will help you reduce the amount of administrative time if you were to add accounts in the future. So if I do an overview of this one real quick, you can see, like I was saying before, this row here is totaling these two. I just want to show you real quick, if I were to change this row number to 20 and change this formula to 20, if I go into my overview, it's still going to total the two. It might be easier just to do this if these only are going to be included in one total. Again, no right or wrong here. This is just a personal preference. And here are some of the other features and fields that I was talking about. Now, in this particular case, on a balance sheet, this might not be that relevant, but if I wanted to just see information for a particular department for that row, I can put that filter on here. To show you how easy it is to create some financial statements, I'm just going to create a new one real quick, and I'm going to call this Demo 2. And I'm going to go in to edit this account schedule, and you can see it's all blank. This is where I would come in and create whatever I want to create. I'm going to if you're not paying attention right this very second, you might miss how easy it is to do this. So I'm going to filter by my balance sheet account. So my GL account list now hopefully is filtered by my balance sheet. I'm going to select everything and hit OK, and boom, I have an account schedule made. And I can go into an overview. This is going to pull in the last one that I used. And like I said, on the fly, I can come in here and change to any other column layout that I want to. For a balance sheet, again, this might not be as relevant, but then while I'm in here, I can also go to next period and previous period. So I have quarters chosen here. I can choose a month. Again, this is going to change the period based on the options that I have here. And then if I wanted to do other filtering, and you can see here, by default, this is only going to be my global dimensions that are going to show here. Okay. And we'll show how we can change that up a little bit when we get into analysis view. I'm going to show you that in just a little second here. So in order to look at my column layouts, I'm just going to select this one here. Actually, let me go to this one right here. I'm going to select this particular row layout, and this row layout has this column layout assigned to it. If I wanted to see it or edit it, I can just select my edit column layout here, and this is my column layout based on the one that I had just chosen. So you can see here where I have indicated this is that formula that would be leveraging the percent base total. So I selected this one so that I can go into my account schedule, and you can see here I have this set base for 4%. And if I do an overview of this one, the fact that my column layout had that specific formula in it, see I have my total revenue, and each one of my rows here is giving me what each one of these is as a percent of revenue. So there, there's quite a bit of power here. That's basically the point I'm trying to make. Okay, so that's your column layout and row layout and a snapshot. One other thing that I do want to show real quick while I'm here. Let's go home, and I'm going to go to chart of accounts, and I just want to show that on, again, just for on your reports, if I were to select any one of the account schedules, by default it's going to pull in the default column layout, and you can change those dynamically as well. Here, you're not tied to the one that's just a default. That's really kind of like the point that I'm showing here. And then depending on what you pick, when you preview or print it, it's going to show, display the column layout based on the date that you have here. Okay, so that's a snapshot, high level of account schedules and setting defaults. Now let's talk about analysis views. Analysis views are really powerful and very underutilized. I don't see, I have a few clients that use them, but as people's analysis and reporting needs are becoming, more and more necessary, more and more robust, or more and more detailed, I'm finding that a lot of people are becoming a little bit more interested in the analysis views. This, if you were to preview and overview one of this, and I'll show you this in just a second, this actually looks very similar to your GL balance by dimension, if anyone uses that. And that also is a very powerful tool that sometimes I find is very underutilized. But what this does is when you create the view, you can specify specific GL account ranges that you use over and over again. You can put indicate different compression levels, and you don't have to include your whole entire GL chart of accounts. So it gives you a little bit more concise reporting. Another nice, the biggest advantage to using an analysis view, like I had just shown you earlier when we were previewing the account schedule, you can only usually get a view to filter into your two primary global dimensions. And again, this is specific to the core NAV users, and not if you have any type of an add-on that might give you visibility into other dimensions. On your analysis view, this is where you can view some of your shortcut dimensions. And if I associate an analysis view with an account schedule, I'll show you in just a second once we kind of walk through all of this, where you would be able to see, get a little bit better reporting and visibility and drill down into some of your other shortcut dimensions. Once you define your other shortcut dimensions on your analysis view, you can even further to a little bit more detail any of the specific dimensions that you've indicated on the view. Another thing I want to note about this actually creates a whole separate table. There is another separate table in NAV that will give you a list of your analysis view entries. That table can get updated in one of two ways. You can enable your analysis view to update and posting. So what that means is every time you post a general ledger entry, it is going to update the analysis view table with your new GL information. When you first create an analysis view, when you select this option, you'll get a warning that it might slow down your posting. So far, I have not seen where checking that option makes a significant change in performance if someone does that. But if you start seeing that it does slow it down, you might want to come in and change this back to disable. The only thing then is if you want to use this analysis view, you have to come in and periodically update it so that you have the most current general ledger information on it. Another nice feature about this analysis view is in our next segment, we're going to be talking about jet reports. Inherently, your jet reports will also only use and display your two global dimensions on a GL function. You can also leverage this analysis view on the GL function to also give you visibility into your other shortcut dimensions. I just wanted to show you real quickly for the people who do use GL balance by dimension, if you were to go into an overview or look at these, how similar the two of them are. If you're on your chart of accounts and you go to your navigate tab, you can see your GL balance by dimension. And if I were to edit my analysis view, because I want to do analysis by dimension using this view, some of the only differences in this is it's going to give me my view name. Inherently, when I open up my view to analyze it, it's going to give me the GL account filters that I've defined on there, and those are the only accounts I'm going to be able to preview this on, whereas on my GL by balance, I will always have all of my GL accounts in my chart of accounts to look at. And then here, I'm going to be able to filter by the 4 dimensions that I've just defined on the view. And here, on my GL by dimension, I'm only going to have my 2 global dimensions. On my options tabs and my matrix options, those are pretty much all identical between the two. So if anyone likes your GL balance by dimension and you need to get visibility into some of your other shortcut dimensions, using analysis views is the way to go. Here I just wanted to give a little bit more detail on all the different fields. I've kind of talked about it a little bit already, but one thing I do want to talk about a little bit more, just like on your GL balance by dimension, the nice thing about this analysis, both of these views, is I can switch up my lines and my columns so I can get multi-dimensional reporting. So I can look at my GL accounts, my rows as my GL accounts, and then my columns. I can, since I have my shortcut dimensions here, I now have those as options to view my columns, and we'll go in and look at that in just a little bit and see how we can manage that and change that kind of on the fly as well. Now, how does this all relate to account schedules? If we go back to our account schedule list, once we have set up an analysis view, there was another column here where I can add an analysis view name. So on any one of them, I can do that. So then when I go to an overview, of the statement, I now have all 4 of the dimensions that I've indicated on this view available to filter on, and that adds an incredible amount of power to any one of your account schedule layouts. In addition to be able to define this on my row layout, I can also define this on my column layout. Inherently on my column layouts as well, if I wanted to have column layouts that gave me, side-by-side comparison of different departments or projects, if I add an analysis view to my column layout, I can give myself a little bit more flexibility as to what dimensions I can add on my columns and filter each one of my columns by adding a default analysis view to my column layout as well. So let's go in and take a look at analysis views. Okay, I'm going to go to the same campaign one that we were looking at in the example. To actually set one up, I would hit New, and you would just get a blank screen, and you would define whatever it is that you want here, your different shortcut dimensions. The sky's the limit. You only have an option of adding 4. To edit an existing one, I would select the specific analysis view that I want to edit, and I would come into edit. And so you can see here, this is the account filter range that we were looking at. I have a date compression of a week. Here are the other options that you have here. If you hit none, you're going to get complete detail. And again, if you, like I said, we're going to go into an overview in just a second. If I go into an overview, all of my data is going to be compressed by week. I'm not going to get a whole lot of detail, and if you don't need it, that's fine. This just makes this a little bit more manageable to work with. Here is that enable on posting, and you can see here that this is tagged to update on posting, and it keeps track of the last entry number, and that should actually equal, display the last entry number that you have in your chart of accounts if I have enable on posting. Again, here's that filter that I was talking about. If you want to do additional dimensional reporting, filtering, you can add that here. I typically don't see that on this particular view. And then down here is where you would define the 4 dimensions that you want to show here. So again, just like on your GL balance by dimension, I can go in and take a look at this. And if I wanted to show it in a matrix, I would hit Edit Analysis View, and then I can go to Show Matrix. And then here I can see I've indicated on my analysis view that I want to look at it by period. Okay, so I'm going to change this because I've indicated on here that I have this other shortcut dimension of area. I'm going to go back to Show Matrix, and then now it's showing my areas. Well, gosh, I really don't know what 10, 20, 30, 40 means on my area. So then I'm going to come back here and go to Show Column Name. And I'm going to go to Show Matrix, and then now it gives me the description of each one of my columns. So pretty nice. And then I can change the different periods in which I want to show it. Now, with the analysis views, if you start showing your columns as departments or one of your dimensions and you have a lot of them, there are limits as to how many columns will be displayed in the Show Matrix. And if you kind of go off the page, it'll show right here what your column set is, and then you can toggle between the different column sets. So again, once you have the analysis views defined, I'm going to go back to my account schedules. And I'm going to go to my demo one here, and I'm just going to do a preview of my demo. See, I only have department and project listed here. If I go to edit my list, and I'm going to add that campaign analysis view to my list, and then if I go to an overview, now I have all 4 of those, and I have a little bit more flexibility to do a little bit more filtering on my account schedules. So that's where the power of the analysis view comes into play when you associate it with any one of your financials. So if I go into edit my column layout as well, okay, see here I still only have department and project. If I were to go to my column layout list, I'm on balance only. I'm going to edit my list, and I'm going to add campaign here. I might have to escape out of this and get back in, and I'm going to go back into my edit my see, now my column layout gives me the 4 dimensions that I've defined in my analysis view. So I've gained a whole lot of flexibility in my view and my filtering that I have available if I were to want to create columns for each one of my sales campaigns. So just a few helpful hints on all of the features that we talked about today. When you go into your accounts schedules, if you want to create them manually, there's an Insert GL feature. You don't necessarily need to select a whole range. You can kind of cherry pick them and highlight them by using your control key and quickly set up ranges of accounts on your row layout. Using your analysis views, as we just saw, gives you a lot more flexibility and in-depth filtering on your account schedule overviews and column layouts. I just also want to remind you that your account schedules aren't necessarily used just for financial reporting. You can set up account schedules where if you find that you're doing analysis on specific accounts or specific departments all the time, certainly use your column layouts to get very concise data. And again, you have flexibility of changing your date ranges. I mean, you can manually change any of your account or row schedules anytime you want. Drill down features can be used on any of those, on your analysis views, on your GL by dimensions, and your account schedules. And I also remind you that your analysis views are also very powerful because they could be used on your JET reports. And JET reports is going to be our next topic that we're going to be featuring next month. So hopefully see you all then. At this point in time, I'd like to remind you to use your chat box to let us know if there's any other topics that you would want us to feature in any of our webinars. If you have any questions, please also put those in your chat box, and hopefully we'll see you next month for part 2 of our financial reporting with NAV, where we're going to be featuring JET reports. Again, here's my contact information. And like I said, email is the best way to reach me. If you want to give a call, if I don't answer, please leave a message and I'll get back to you at my earliest convenience. And please also find us on the social media sites, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. So I'm going to put my contact information back up here and open it up to any questions.
Great information, Danica. Yeah, we have a number of questions that came in during your presentation today. And just to remind everyone, if you have any topics that you'd like to see for upcoming webinars, please use the chat box, or you can email Danica directly, and we'll get those scheduled in. Okay, the first question, Danica, is there a limit on the number of account schedule rows or columns that can be set up for account schedules? That's a good question.
No, there's not a number of, you're not limited on the number of rows or columns. Specifically on the columns, you just need to be cautious because specifically when you're printing them, there's only going to be so many columns that are available. I think on a core financial, there's probably only like 5 or 6. Even if you change it to landscape, of course, if we are not your reseller, we can customize to add more columns. But if you're printing out reports specifically, you need to be careful because if you have too many columns, it just gets to a point where it's not readable. But there is not a limit.
All right, fantastic. And the next question comes in, can the views and account schedules be sent to Microsoft Excel?
Yes, all of your account schedules and your analysis views can be sent to Excel very easily. That's another feature that's been built in all throughout NAV, and it gives you kind of like a raw data view of the view account schedules and the views. But yes, all of them can be sent to Excel.
All right, and the last question that we have so far, and I encourage everybody, while we have a few minutes left, to use the Q&A application here in Zoom to ask us any questions. Next question in, can more than one account category list be defined?
No, so far in NAV, this is just the first release of it, but there's only one set of categories that can be set up. I'm not sure if there is something in the future where they might be able to give you different core financials, but right now there's only one set of GL account categories that can be set up.
All right, wonderful. And Danica, that rounds up all the questions that have come in so far, and I don't see any new ones coming in. So why don't we take a few minutes here to kind of wrap up, and we do invite everyone to stay tuned to their email. We will have our next webinar next month. And Danica, remind us of the subject for that one again. And again, just let's reiterate your contact information for anyone that may have any questions after they go back to their offices and think about things.
Our next topic is going to be JET reports. We're going to be featuring the difference between JET Express, JET Professional, and JET Enterprise, and I think the goal is to have that sometime the end of March. And then part 3 of our series is the newer versions of NAV come equipped with Power BI. That's a web-based analytical tool that can be used, and we're going to see this is April, May. That's going to be our June topic where we're going to be featuring that. And if anyone has any further questions that they can't think of right now, or if they want additional help with setting up account schedules or getting in a little bit more in-depth information on how to use and set up the analysis views, please don't hesitate to contact us. We'd be happy to help you. Either that, or if we're not your regular NAV reseller, I'm sure your NAV reseller would be happy to help you enhance your reporting capabilities using the account schedules and analysis views.
Wonderful, Danica. Great information as per normal. I love doing these webinars with you every month. Great. I learn something new about NAV every time we do it. Thanks again for doing this, and folks, make sure you join us next month for another webinar in our FMS series. Until then, you have Danica's contact information, and I encourage you to reach out to her. And if not, we'll see you all next month. Thanks again, Danica, for doing this. Great information as per normal.
Thank you.